Seven, six, five, four, three, two, one.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Welcome to the Henry Huzzy Coaching YouTube channel and podcast, where we discuss everything physique and lifestyle related, as well as the science of getting jacked. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the next episode of Chat with Coach. Today I am talking with Daniel Feeney. I met Daniel about, I'd say almost a year ago to this date. I applied for a position with Team Wilson Bodybuilding for them to do my prep this year, and he is the gatekeeper at Team Wilson. We've kept in contact, and I've been sending back and forth some stuff to them, basically, progress shots, because I told them I'd keep an update. So me and Daniel have been talking fairly frequently recently. So I decided to get him on the show. In 2016, Daniel earned his pro status in both the ANBF and WNBF. He has a Bachelor of Science in Systems Engineering and is currently an MBA candidate at the Malcolm School of Business in CT, and he's a Marine Chief Engineer. He specializes in fitness nutrition as well. As I mentioned, he's the gatekeeper at Team Wilson Bodybuilding. He's a sponsored athlete with First Form, and as well, the owner and operator of Feeney Fit. Everyone, say hi to Daniel. Daniel, say hi.
Henry, thank you so much for the intro, and I'm very appreciative to be asked on. Thank you so much.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Now, this is going to be something a little different than we're talking about recently. We've been really diving into show prep a lot on the podcast / YouTube recently, and now we're going to start talking a little bit about off-season. Off-season is very important, especially the post-recovery phase of training for shows. A lot of people think that, you get off that stage and you just go from stage back to normal life, and that is not a common, it's not what happens. People need to be able to recover back to basal hormonal rates, back to an active, metabolism. They need to slowly introduce food, or, don't go crazy with it, because what we see a lot is rapid weight gain post shows. And then people just go from that into having a pretty sloppy off-season. So we're going to talk with Daniel today about what he does with his clients and what he does basically coming out of the off-season and then going into a very, very good growth season. So, Daniel, post-show day, what do you do with your athletes?
Post-show, so yes, very specific time and very unique time as far as the progression goes for bodybuilding or any physique competitor. Not too many athletes get to feel what it is or feel how it training and a daily life is after a contest prep. So usually hormones are not in your favor. Nutrient partitioning is not in your favor. And energy levels not in your favor. So yeah, normally the first day I like to just tell my athletes to have a free day, eat intuitively, and enjoy it. And that first time is very crucial. Those first couple days. Usually, if they're competing on a Saturday, I'll give them macros on a Monday and see how they follow them. And some clients will tell you like, "Oh man, I need a break," but I'm huge with reverse dieting, just because I understand we've lived through it. So I know how crucial it is in setting up not only your off season, but also your next prep. And even if your prep is 2 years out or even 3 years out, that'll dictate how I structure a reverse. If someone's looking to compete the next year, their reverse is going to be, I'm going to hold them a little tighter than probably most coaches do, just because it can shave weeks off of their next prep. It's pretty interesting how specific that is, because you can push food as fast as you want. The body's going to move their hormone levels as slow as it wants or on its own pace. So if you can intuitively kind of check those body signals and read the athlete to try to walk food up with those, that's so crucial. So directly after that show day, for some reason, I mean, I hate throwing absolutes out there, or numbers, and I'm even an engineer, so I like numbers, but I've noticed that they don't play out well in nutrition and the body. But anyway, like 3% body weight gain, and that's in pounds. So, I mean, if that's a 95-pound competitor, that's like 3 pounds, just under. If that's a 150-pound person, it's 4.5. 180, that's like 5.5. So that weight, that's what I'm comfortable with as a coach to see jump up immediately, because that's going to a lot be some fat, which is good. That's the goal.
A lot of water.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
100%.
Which is just going to fuel training and such from there on out. So that 3%, I'm okay with. No matter how fast that comes back. If they're slow out of the gate, then that's where I'll start increasing food faster. But
okay.
So that 3% is very quick. Then the next priorities that I look at in that time period, and this time period that we're looking at, it can be 2 months, it can be 6 months. 6 months is probably on the longer end, and even if they're competing very, very close. Some people will qualify for a nationals or worlds or something in the spring, and then they say, well, I want to compete in the fall. And you're like, all right, well, our growth season's going to be very small, but we need to keep the reins on this so that we can actually prep in the fall and improve upon your physique instead of just fight the body the whole way through, because that'd be miserable. But so the priorities that I look at diet-wise is your nutrient partitioning is going to be not in your favor, and your testosterone is going to be low for males and females, which plays into the nutrient partitioning, how you structure your macro profile, and then as well as your cortisol is going to be very high, and then along with the hunger hormones and such. But so my first macros that I actually like to hit are if they're feeling very poorly energy-wise, I will give them carbs first. But otherwise, I actually have seen good results with hitting them with a small protein bump and a small fat bump. Kind of helps training and recovery, because I know sometimes you're just like achy after contest prep because you've been grinding to hold onto your volume and your intensity for those last couple of weeks. So so that actually helps. I feel I've seen it's not a mental boost, but recovery. And then I do like bringing fat up faster in males, kind of help walk that testosterone back up. So I'll make that small bump, but then the rest, then we start going into carbs and start increasing carb macros. And I like to hit that around your training. So lots of times I'll say, all right, these carbs, let's hit into your post-training meal if they're an afternoon lifter, or if they're a morning lifter, I say, yeah, let's hit like a pre-workout shake and add 10 grams of carbs or such to it, depending on body weight and all that stuff, as far as dosing goes. But that, and so I feel carbs prior to training really helps drive cortisol down in that training window. And then the other priority in your diet is I group cardio and diet together. So the other priority is to try to remove cardio as quickly as possible, but also with checking your body weight. So body weight, this reverse period, I like keeping to a pound or less a week. And so part of that 2 to 6 month period, you can actually look and see how long was the athlete cutting for. Were they cutting for, was it a 16-week prep or was it a 32-week prep? This will dictate actually how far their hormones have been driven into the dirt, kind of, so to speak. So that can kind of help you in your mental state know, well, this is going to be a longer reverse since I was digging for a lot longer. And so you might walk up a pound a week for, I did it for a whole year, actually.
Wow.
And I had the time to do that. So I decided to take a longer off season. So it's where, you're a few days after your show, I'm asking, all right, what are your goals? And then this hits on your mental priorities. When's your goal is to compete again? And as a coach, I feel it's vital to, as we were saying, to help the athlete understand if you want to improve upon your physique, it's advantageous to take a longer off season, because your reverse, especially if you have a long prep, your reverse is going to eat into that. And then if you roll right into a deficit, you're chipping away at your growth season quite a bit. And in order to make any progress, you need to spend time outside of a caloric deficit. And if you spend, I'll take myself for an example. I spent 8 months in a caloric deficit. So 8 months, every single day, I was sending my body signals that I wasn't getting fed enough. Like that does a deal on your hormones. That's why your hormones will walk down. So I wanted to spend as much time as possible sending my body those signals that it's being overfed. So that's where the recovery diet, the popularized recovery diet, it's a little fast for me. I like to push that 3% is okay if that comes on quick, but then I'm a fan of a slower reverse, and it's mentally taxing. So this will also dictate you read into cues with your client as far as how fast you push them or how slow you push them, I should say. Yeah. And so if you can extend, all right, we have a 30-pound weight gain or weight band that we're working with. If we can do that slower, we could be in a caloric surplus for a year, or we could take those 30 pounds and make that 52 weeks. Or some people go a little faster. If you take that 30-pound band that you want to stay away from stage weight, and you're putting on 2 pounds a week, you're doing a 15-week reverse, or I don't think your hormone levels would be back to normal. So
totally.
And so with the hormone levels not back to normal, your body weight, your body composition is probably not going to be as favorable as it was when you were going down in a deficit going into it. So that's another why I try to stretch that period out. And as you structure an off season, I'll put the longest time between like mini cuts and such right after contest prep, because that follows the longest time that you've been in a deficit. Okay. So that's my philosophy behind that. Because for me, and some of my other athletes that are taking like 3 years off, I'll try to hit a reverse and stretch it out for as long as possible for that first year or so. And then the mini cuts might be a little faster coming in the next 2 years. And then the last year, you really have to look at scheduling for, I'm huge into scheduling. Always have, where you want to be and where you're at, and have that time frame set up. I think that can really bite you in the butt if you're not.
Do you know what? This is actually something that I preach to every single one of my clients, is that planning is the most important. And, you look at things in a macro view, and then you have like a macro goal of a year or 2 years from now that you want to compete. And then you move on to, you plan out your mesocycle for training for the next 5-6 weeks, but you always have that macro goal in mind. In fact, as we progress through times, I remember this year I had, my macro goal set out that I did want to compete again this year and improve as well. So, even though I had a plan for my entire year, I had to reassess every 5 to 6 weeks and be like, okay, is this progressing the way I want to? Do I need to add in something else here? Do I need to change something else here? Because it's always good to have a plan, but you need to be able to be malleable with it as well, which I think is very, very important. And, as you were just talking about reverse dieting and recovery, and I was talking to you off screen about this, how I personally like the recovery style diet. And the reason that I did this was, one, I knew I had a very short growth season. My growth season, I needed to start prep again, 4 months out. That gives me only 8 months from point end of show till I have to basically start show prep again. So, for me in that position, I found I did the Helmsian approach. As you said, it's become very popularized. That's where I heard it from,
Sure.
3DMJ. And, I basically increased my calories to just under maintenance, and then I just removed most of my cardio, but not all. I monitored my weight gain, and I got up 8%, like almost 7-8% in the first month. And after that, it didn't really move a whole lot. But I found it worked for me, but I know people that it doesn't work for. And as you mentioned, a lot of this stuff is a big, big mental battle as well as physical, right? Because for me, I know I can have that self-control. I can take that amount
Sure.
of food and I can be like, okay, that's it. I can back off. But a lot of these issues are people, they want, that hormone levels, the problems with not feeling full, the issues with, just eating all the time and basically not feeling full. And people want to feel full. It's a thing, right?
Right.
But,
Absolutely.
For me, I'm able to say, I need to eat 3,000 calories and that's it. These are my macros for the day. That's it. But in monitoring my weight, like you said, you get that first initial bump and then you come up slowly, and then all of a sudden I just basically capped out. But in that way, I was able to, progress a little bit more optimally this off season. And even though I stayed within a reasonable body fat range, I think I was able to make some decent gains. As we mentioned as well, I'm still basically in the beginner stage of training. I'm not monstrous by any means. I have about 2 years of lifting really, really well under my belt. And I'm still able to make those newbie gains, and that's a really big part of me progressing even more so this way. Because if my hormones were damaged and I wasn't able to provide a stimulus over time in the off season, and I wasn't making many newbie gains, I don't think I would have been able to do it appropriately. Because once you get to intermediate, advanced, then you have to definitely take a more standard approach. And like you said, a nice long off season. Just because you need to be able to overload and make gains over time. It's the big issue, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great point as far as training age and how to structure that goes into your planning as well, and what you can get away with planning, because there's always ideal or whatever, but optimal is usually never. It's good to know what optimal is, just so you can know which direction to hone your skills towards. Yeah. But optimal is rarely ever achievable. But just because it's life.
Yeah, well, 100%. But you can always strive for optimal. But yeah, like you said, and the thing about optimal too is, like you said, you don't like to talk in absolutes when it comes to nutrition. It's the same with training too. Training is very different for everyone. Absolutely. You can't speak in absolutes. You can't be like, this is the absolute best, because what's the absolute best for a bodybuilder that's been training for 8 years is very different than a bikini athlete that has only been training for 6 months before the show.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's very, 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 very different.
Sure. And so yeah, and I mean, I'm huge with the mental aspect of prep and bodybuilding and physique competing. So I'm probably more of a coach that pries a little more than I should. But I mean, post competition, that's on my mental notes. I have you really want to loosen up your diet as much as you can. So and it can be small. It can be, you literally go by the client and how they're feeling. But I tell them to spend some time with their family. Take those meals out if you can, and I'll say have a meal out with your family, and that's one of my measures that I do with client check-ins. So all right, take your meal out. Let me know how you felt, and I kind of mention it in kind of like a training note. But I like to hear, as far as whether they go out and they say, "Oh man, it was like an empty tank. Like, holy cow, I just kept on feeding and feeding," or whether they say, "Well, I was super nervous. I got the healthiest thing on the menu." This kind of tells me how fast we can go. So I think it takes a little bit of intuitive coaching as well, as far as how fast you push someone, and then talking to them about their day. I don't really have a set structure or template that I have my clients return back to me. Mm-hmm. I try to get to know them, and so I asked them, like, what did you do during the week? So I'm looking to hear whether their NEAT went up, because that's important usually with food, energy wise, and even their how they look at food, and whether they're taking 30 minutes to make their breakfast and eating it in 5. Like that might not be ideal for progressing in a healthy lifestyle. So I'll ask them how their viewpoints on food are. So that's the other. That usually dictates when a reverse is necessarily done. If you're feeling good and your mental state is there, so that you can go out and enjoy your time and not feel super like if the thought of going to a party where they had food provided was like
terrifying.
They're like, oh gosh, what am I going to do? Where's my Tupperware? Like, I need to bring a cooler, all that stuff. So that's where you want to get away from, because there's a time to be intense, and then there's a time to pull off the reins a little bit. And I think it helps having that. I hate using balance. It's the only word that's coming to me right now. But
it's fine. Like I would use that term as well.
So yeah, it helps having that that mindset towards food and how your diet is. And then for training notes, I do like to actually hit a deload, a volume deload directly after a show, because usually you are, or at least how I structure, you'll be holding on to volume as much as you can in your training. You'll be holding on to intensity, and most people are holding on. They're trying to hold on to that. So if you can do a little volume reset, that kind of helps. You're kind of licking your wounds and seeing if you have any injuries, any sorenesses, any aches and pains. Some people have really bad joint aches, achy joints and stuff towards the end of prep. So that's another reason why that protein and fat bump right out of the gate I find beneficial. So and that helps set up their training moving on into their off season. So so that usually covers it for the reverse period for me. I mean, we could go into super detail on it.
Okay. But, yeah, awesome. And the mental aspect, I really like to read about this as much. Actually, in fact, I read just as much, in like self-help books, like stuff by Tony Robbins and Simon Sinek, and finding reasons, because people. It's a lot of it, like you said, is a mental battle and stuff, and going out with family and stuff and appreciating that and enjoying it is taken down a notch a little bit, as you mentioned. And, if you take someone for, if they do a 20-week prep, if they do even longer, a lot of, it's become popular right now to do extremely long preps. Like you look at people like Alberto Nunez and stuff, and that do almost 3/4 a year with preps with these guys, and they're just coming down very, very slowly over time. That you're nailed with structure for 4, 5, 6 months, and that's your life. You have structure.
Absolutely.
And that's like me right now. I know exactly when I'm going to eat. I time my meals. I know everything and how it's going, and I'm very precise with it. But in the post-show period, like you said, you have to relax. You have to, like you said, find a little bit of balance. You need to find enjoyment in not having direct structure, but being able to walk outside that structure, knowing that everything is going to be okay. Because I think that's what happens. A lot of people, especially when they unhealthily come out of a reverse or they start a reverse, they have these issues and their mental battles of being like, if I don't do this, if I don't have this structure, I'm going to get fat. I'm going to be I'm going to basically get overweight very quickly, and that they have this mental battle. But it's listen, just relax, enjoy your life. This is part of it, if you're stuck in this place for a long period of time that, you have your structure, but you need to be able to go out with family and friends. That's a very large part of a person's lifestyle, and that wears on you over time. It wears, right? And that's a big part with me. I have clients that, things happen in your life and they're like, you know what, Henry, I was out with my family tonight, and we had a family tragedy, and all of a sudden, I cheated today and I went out for dinner 3 times, and I'm like, that's okay. It's all right. You
Yeah.
had one day off. It's not going to kill you, right? And
Yeah.
people need to be able to and know, because like, clients, they freak out. They have like one day and they're like, I did this and everything's over and I'm not going to be ready for show. And I'm like, you overate like 600 calories. You're not like, you're on a 2,000 calorie diet. You're not going
Right.
to, like, it's not the end of the world, right? But I always say, as long as it doesn't become a habit. If
Absolutely.
it becomes a habit, if it becomes consistent, then it's when the issue starts to come up. But yeah, people need to realize there's a time for being strict, there's a time for nailing it, there's a time for structure, and then there's a time to start to like take your foot off the gas a little bit, start to enjoy your life. And that's a very big part of post-show for me, being able to do that. Because my significant other right now, she's like, all right, I know this is coming, right? At 12 weeks, like the first 4 weeks of my prep, I'm very loose. I'll hit my macros, but like, it's a little loose. As long as my weight's going down at the levels that I want, I'll keep things. But she knows as soon as that like 12-week, 8-week mark hits, I call it monk mode. That I just shut everything down and I just basically go into it. But, like I said, it's a very much that after a show, I want to be able to spend time with friends and family. And like you said, it's a very big mental battle. But then after that, we transition into what we both like to call growth season, because as we mentioned earlier, off season makes it sound like it's just like time off and you're not really trying. In fact, for me, I find off season is even more difficult than show prep, and there's a reason for that. Is because, like I mentioned to you, I work in a restaurant. I'm on my feet 8 to 10 hours a day. My like calories that I burn in a day, if my maintenance calories is 3,200 to 3,300 a day. Now I'm trying to get if I'm trying to I'm losing weight right now on like around 2,700 approximately, and I'm doing minimal cardio and I'm losing about 1.5 pounds a week. So it's like very quick, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. So my carbs are still at 325 and I'm losing weight easily. And so a lot of people are looking at me right now like, I hate this guy. But believe me, I'm doing cardio and running up and down. Like there's 17 stairs between where the kitchen is and where I need to go to the restaurant. So I run that about 200 times a night, I'd say. So
there's your cardio right there.
There's my cardio right there. But, and that makes even off season or growth season, even more difficult for me because I need to eat a lot of food to be able to grow. And, to be in a surplus, especially over time, and people don't talk about it in the off season or growth season. I keep going back to that term that you need to actually increase calories over time, I find, because if not, I just stop growing after, a couple weeks. I eat the same amount of foods and you just plateau out. My metabolism kind of shifts off a gear a little bit. I'm always running kind of hot and then it goes on like that. But how do you start the growth season for your clients? Like, where do you begin?
So exiting the reverse, scheduling. We come back to scheduling again, and when we want to prep. So this will help dictate where we take our training. And I like to have like ballpark figures as far as like a mini cut or such. Because the other philosophy that I follow, or school of thought, is I don't like any maintenance. Maintenance might be a period of like in between two shows that are weeks apart, but otherwise I like driving your food up, and this goes back to sending your body signals of being overfed, and even if it's like 50 calories of being overfed, I still like giving that body the signal. So I'm always either in a surplus or doing a very quick mini cut in order to get right back to a surplus again. And so this will help your hormone levels as well, driving them up, and your metabolism. Anytime someone's like, well, I'm just going to maintain and just kind of stay at this body weight for the next 6 months while I train, like, man, you're losing out. You can slowly walk your food up. Keep walking your food up. And even if it's super small, if it's 5 carbs, 5 grams of carbs a week, that can add up quite a bit over time. So I like pushing food up, and I like setting a schedule for mini cuts and such. And we'll ballpark where those will be structured, and the priorities that we hit for the growth season are, your training. You're going to want to be getting stronger from macro cycle to macro cycle, but I like to throw in some strength measures towards the end of each training block. I like hitting a training block for maybe 8 to 16 weeks, somewhere around there. If it's my power lifters, I'll try to walk that out a little bit longer. But and especially if momentum's still there, we'll carry it on. However, I also like structuring very high like hypertrophy and strength programming to very high volume, and I try to jump back and forth between these two. So like high intensity and high volume, and frequency of the training just kind of goes in there to even out your training and recovery. So you're really looking at injury prevention, recovering to the fullest, and then training stimulus. As far as I like hitting. Let's see. So I will set up a strength block, and we'll be hitting intensity. Intensity will be walking up over the course of those 8 to 16 weeks, and obviously volume's not as high since intensity is, and then we'll get some benchmarks, and I like trying to carry over some of that strength into walking your weights up and hitting more of a volume-based training block, and I'll walk volume up very high within those 8 to 16 weeks or longer. But that's how I like to structure my training, and if I can do that around their diet as well, so as their food's going up, they're going to be able to. I like having them kind of their food going up while they're in a strength block, heavy intensity block, and then if you can jump, if you're like hitting your body fat set point, or metabolism slowing down a bit, that's when you can jump over into a volume block, and volume block, you're going to be doing more work. It can help drive your metabolism up another 200-400 calories or whatever. So use that as your advantage, and then also I try to structure, if you can, if you're having a mini cut, I like to have those mini cuts very quick. Maybe drop in 1.5 to 2 pounds a week, which would be too fast in my eyes for a contest prep.
100%. What's your ideal length for mini cuts? Like, how long would this last? For myself, I like to stick within the 4 to 6. Like 6 is the longest, absolute longest I'd go. But I generally like 4, 5, 6 weeks. What's your thought on like duration of mini cut, or is it just basically physique based?
It'll be physique based a little bit, but and also how far away from stage weight we're keeping them, and it'll be scaled linearly compared to the length of the growth season. So if they have a 3-year growth season, I'll allow that to be 8 to 12 week mini cut. If you're getting closer to contest prep, or if they only have a shorter an 18 month or so, then that's going to be very close to 6 weeks, 4 weeks, just rapid. Maybe 8 pounds, just shed 8 pounds real quick, and then jump right back into a surplus. Totally. So that helps. You're not dinging your testosterone as much. So that the diet priorities in that growth season are to drive your, be in that surplus for as long as possible. That'll drive your hormones up, their testosterone levels up, drive your metabolism up. And then I also like around that, the diet is to jump back into coming out of the show in reverse and such. Lots of times people jump to sugary foods, very, ice creams and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If you can kind of do like a mental reset or a diet reset and say, all right, this is my growth season now. I'm going to be in this for an extended period. My food volume is going to be going up. My amount that I can work with. So let's get back to, the meat and potatoes of pun intended, dieting, and so that helps. I feel set up quality lean gains and such, as best as you can possibly get to lean gains, and that's where pace comes into play as well. So that's the diet priorities that I structure around.
Yeah. For your athletes, what is your ideal weight gain for, like, say, male or female athletes? For myself, I like to stick to like the pound a week kind of for men. Some people like to do it a little slower, but I find like if you hit a pound, you're making that. You're definitely making that gain. It's coming in, and
Sure.
we're in the level of chasing optimal then, But
Sure.
for females, I like to do anywhere between like a half pound to like 3/4 a week. I think that's in like a good growth season. I think that's great, and I tend to with training at least hit my females with very high frequency on their muscle groups and stuff like that, and I find they a lot of them even have a fair bit of trouble even putting on weight because their workouts are very intense because they recover very quickly. I find a lot of the times, as well as the intensity's there, the frequency's there, and they're working out about 6 days a week. But yeah, what's the ideal like weights you're looking for not only male but female athletes for growth in the off season or growth season?
I'll let my males go from anywhere from like 20 to 30 pounds up, depending on how much time we have. Again, and usually this is very if I'm hitting 20 to 25 pounds, we're doing our job with correcting hormone levels. And females, I like to hit, depends on how much they weigh. If someone's 95 pounds, I might let them get up 10 pounds, and then we'll look at where their physique is. If they're this is where the training age comes into play.
I was just going to point that out. Yeah, you can't take that. You can't use that as an example for someone that's been training for 6 months or someone that's been training for 5 years. It's a very, very big. These are robust numbers. I just want to mention to everybody this again as well.
Absolutely, yes. Anywhere from like 10 to 15 pounds, and that's usually where females mentally like to lie. If they get too far away from that stage weight number, they feel like they've fallen off somewhere along the lines, and so you take that into account. You don't ever want to feel, we were talking about off season and feeling off. You want to feel on while you're off season. You also want to feel like you're still a competitor. So there's some guys and girls that they're bulking gets a little out of hand or whatever. So that takes a mental chip at you, I feel. And so that's definitely structured. And it's interesting you say frequency with females because there's some science out there that says that they can recover faster from training, and so I even structure that into my power lifters for deloading into a competition. A male might deload anywhere from 7 to 10 days out, maybe like 6 to 10 days out, and females they'll be on the shorter end, 4 to 7 days, and so it's interesting how they can recover quite a bit.
It's quite cool, and I find this very interesting as well, and I've dove into the science behind this quite a bit, and especially with females, a lot of them, they don't have the muscle mass, and with smaller muscle groups, they tend to, recover faster. It's why, people can hit biceps 4 days a week, but if you try to do that with legs, with the same intensity and volume, you might be in for an issue, right? Like 100%. So the larger your muscle group becomes, the lower the intensity, and they recover from higher intensity loads much better than men do as well, which is pretty interesting, I thought, as well. So you see a lot of women training with higher intensities during their growth season and stuff like that. Whereas, I stick myself within the range of, 6 is pretty much the lowest I'll ever go with weight. Because training, for me, it's just about muscle size, growth, and, anything lower than that, I find the volume kind of stagnates. And you were speaking about a strength block, For myself personally, my strength block is mostly, I might have some 5 sets of 5 in there somewhere. But, that's very, very rare. And I'm going to stick to the 6 to 8 for my strength block. And like you said, increase the volume and stuff over time. In fact, this off season, my growth started, a strength block for 1 mesocycle, and then I do 3 blocks of hypertrophy. And like you said, that took me 20 weeks. And, watch your body weight. As your body weight progresses, you might need to slap a mini cut in there somewhere to come down, like you said, 8 pounds. One thing that I did this year that I will furtherly avoid for the rest of my life is doing a strength block while you're doing a mini cut. That was a terrible, terrible idea, just because the intensity was there. For the first 2 weeks, I felt amazing. I was in there just like training. My weight was coming down. I was like, this is great. Week 3, overreached. I could, my weights just went from here to whoomph. And I was like, okay, that was dumb,
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things, you live and learn from these experiences, especially with yourself. And I was just kind of like, yeah, let's try it. Maybe I can do it. But I look back at it, and it's when you do stuff like that, even though I was like, let's try it, I kind of knew in the back of my head it was a bad idea, but I just did it anyways. But I look back at it and I'm like, you know what? If I hadn't have done that, I could have had better training. I had to take a deload after pretty much 2.5 weeks of progressive training. And I could have progressively overloaded for 5 weeks and then deloaded. I basically missed an extra week of growth because I had to cut a deload in, right? So it's interesting because a lot of people don't look at it that way, but I do. Because if you have to do an extra, if you're loading for 3 weeks and deloading, that's 25% of the year you're deloading, right? Whereas if you can progressively overload from your minimum adaptive volume to your maximum adaptive volume over a period of 5 weeks, maybe 6, then the percentage of time deloading is very, very low, which is necessary, I always think is very interesting to think about things that way with, like you said, we can't really always hit optimal, but we can always strive for it, right?
Right.
So it's really good. But yeah, I found this year the 3-to-1, hypertrophy to strength worked extremely well for me. And, as you mentioned, or as I mentioned, strength, when you're training that way, you train for strength, it basically resensitizes your body to volume as well. So as you're, hitting that 5, 6, even power blocks and stuff, people doing 3, stuff like that, they undulate some stuff in, get some really good workout, and for a couple period of weeks. But when you hit that volume again, you're going to notice some pretty big changes fairly frequently and very rapidly just because of the resensitization to volume. And then the same thing when you're doing a diet. That mini cut will resensitize you to, lower amount of calories will probably get that same job done again after 6 weeks or 4 weeks. If you were eating 4,000 before, you might be gaining 1 pound a week now on, 3,750. At least that's where I was last time, and it was terrible. I have no idea how these really big bodybuilders will. I guess I can because I used to eat 2,000 and be perfectly fine. But, I'm at the point now in my off season, I'm eating a lot of food, and you ramp it up over time. You're just like, okay, there's only so many carbohydrates I can eat at one time, and increase your fats and proteins. And it's just, I remember my girlfriend just looked at me. She's like, how do you eat this much food at once? And I'm like, I don't even know.
Meal frequency comes into play.
100%. Well, I mean, I like to stick to something that works, that's, convenient. 5 meals a day is convenient for me because get up, pre-workout, post-workout, post-post, it just goes on like that. But any more than that, it starts to get kind of out of my lifestyle, and it makes it even more difficult. So there are a couple of really big meals in there, but that's it. So travel a little bit more further into the off season. We've talked about training a little bit, how you do your periodization and things like that. How do you, what I preach to a lot of people this year, and I started talking about it on my Facebook coaching page as well as, through live feeds. I did a prep for prep. And it came to me actually, and you gave me this thing last year actually, and I didn't tell you this. It's because when I competed last year and I sent you guys all my information, I said, this is what I looked like on stage. This is where I am. I'm going in the off season. I want to compete next year. And I was 182 pounds on stage. And you said, okay, guys, Henry will take you on. We're going to do a 16-week prep. And what's going to happen now is we need you to be 178 pounds before you start prep. And I was like, what? It never even crossed my mind. You know what I mean? And I was like,
yes.
What is this? Why do I, I'm going to be growing all off season. Why do I have to come in at such a weight? And I'm lighter than what I am right now. And I was kind of dumbfounded, right? I was dumbfounded. And I couldn't possibly fathom it. And then I thought about it longer, and it makes sense. You need to be in a position that you have to set yourself up for success. 16 weeks out, 20 weeks out, if I come in 40, 50 pounds overweight, I'm not really setting myself up for success. You do competitions because you want to win, right? And like, you don't do, well, a lot of people, I might say, will do it just for the sake of doing it as a goal of theirs. But for myself and competitive athletes, they want to do it because you want to win, right? And
Sure.
setting myself up for that. Now, how do you set your clients up if they know they're going into a show, say, 6 months down the road? What is your goal? What is your prioritize to get them ready for their show prep?
Yeah, so I like to set up, I've got always an ideal amount of pounds that I want to lose for them during their contest prep. So if they're 180 pounds and I want them to, for that size person, I'd like their prep to be 20 pounds or less. So maybe 15 to 18 pounds would be ideal. I don't want their prep very much longer. So we like to reverse engineer that prep out. And, you throw in some weeks to be ready early. Because that's the other thing is, like you said, we want to better ourselves and we want to do better than our previous best. So what can we do that's going to be advantageous to help us get leaner, to help our hormone levels if we can go slower, and to allow us to be leaner on stage? It's to prep for longer, or to be ready early. So I don't like when people think, well, my last contest prep was 18 weeks, so this one's going to be 18 weeks. And then they try to guess their stage weight. And I always pick, like I competed at 158 this 2016. I'm going to still have 158 in my head when I prep this next time. And if I'm ready 4 weeks early, like, awesome. I get to eat into the show. Like, that's ideal. That's awesome. So there's no such thing as getting ready too early. I mean, of course, months early, but that's not going to happen.
Weeks is fine.
Right. Weeks is fine. So that's where I always say, play to your competitive advantage. If your competitive advantage is showing up on stage lean, do it, and do it with proper planning. So you take that weight gain, and in my example of a 180 pound person, and they're going to be 150 pounds on stage, the end of their off season, we're going to throw in a mini cut, and their food's going to be high. So their hormones are going to be advantageous, better. So we can get away with cutting a little bit quicker, but a mini cut's not going to be as quick as, maybe a middle of the off season or gaining season mini cut. So if you shed 15 pounds, so now we're working with 15, and then you throw in a diet break of 4 to 6 weeks, and then that's when you set up. So those 4 to 6 weeks are crucial. You're thinking, I want to increase my metabolism, walk my food back up. You want to make sure you're doing zero cardio, because you're thinking about, how do I want to enter prep? You want to enter prep with food high, zero cardio, and in a healthy mental state around food and everything. If you're walking in, like you said, with those hunger cues, and that's not an ideal. It's only going to increase from there. So, and one thing I noticed as well, if someone has 30 pounds to lose, they're going to start feeling hungry after they lose the first 10 pounds, regardless. So if you can walk them down, give them a diet break, kind of let those hunger hormones, and even if you add, a couple pounds, that's fine. That's you plan for that as well. So you drop down 15, go back up 3 over those 6 weeks, and then hit phase 2, which is your real contest prep, and that's when you start going slow. And so then you have another 10 pound, 8 pound loss before you start feeling hungry. That's just going to make your lifestyle a lot better, and your experience with prep so much better. I was actually talking to Cliff about this with myself. I just dropped 20 pounds in a mini cut over a little bit longer. I was taking a long time off, so I allowed my weight to get up higher, but I started feeling hungry at 18 pounds after I started losing 18 pounds. And I'm still higher than I was when I entered my contest prep for my last season. And I didn't get hungry until I was like, I'm 192 now, and I didn't start getting like very hungry, checking your watch for the next meal kind of hunger cues until I was like 176 last time. So holy cow, if I had to continue in a long prep and I had those cues starting at 192 instead of 176, that's huge. That's for lifestyle, so for neat's going to be going down. So so you look to try to reverse engineer your prep and see whether you need 2 phases, and it's not bad if you need 2 phases or to enter prep in a positive position. So you also want to make sure your training volume isn't insanely high when you're entering prep, because you'd like to you don't necessarily want to be chipping away at volume while your food's going down. You want those stimulus. You want room to continue adding that training stimulus throughout prep as you're in a caloric deficit. So if you remove training volume after you've been in a caloric deficit for 6 months, it's going to take your body's going to say, yeah, exactly. This muscle is very metabolically expensive. We can get rid of this if that training stimulus is getting out, leaving us. So usually when I enter prep, I want to either increase or just keep volume similar and keep intensity there. So frequency is the one thing I'll give up. So if someone's feeling very drained, I'd be more apt to say, okay, take 2 days off this week, and let's see how you feel after those 2 days. Let me know. We can take another day off as well if need be. Otherwise, I do want you to hit your same volume and intensity when you do have a training session. So let's set you up for quality training sessions. So so that's one thing you're looking at as you enter prep as well. Yep. So yeah, high food, lower-ish volume, and then you definitely want to be in a healthy mental state. And like you said, it's only going to slowly come down. Chip away at your ego, chip away at your self-discipline and all that stuff. So so I definitely take that into consideration. And when you're coaching a contest prep, you're just as much a therapist than you are a strength coach. So and I think coaches who ignore that fact are really not providing the coaching and mentoring that's actually needed in prep.
100% agree with that, and I think that's, you need to be, like you said, a little bit of a therapist a lot of the time with athletes coming down, because they look to you for advice, and they say, I'm having this problem, this is what's going on, and you need to be able to dictate, and push on some positive mental cues, because if they can, and that's something that I try to pride myself with, and I always push to my clients, come talk to me if you have a problem, if you got something going on, come talk to me with it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what differentiates, at least right now, the difference between okay coaches and great coaches is people really need to have that level of back and forth, right?
Absolutely.
And I think for myself, I would never be able to take on a load of clients, because I like to have that one-on-one with people and be able to have that open communication and stuff like that, and people be able to talk to me with their issues they're going through, because I think that's very, very, very important. Because if you are cold and you're just a data person, you're just do this, do that, that's it. If they're having issues, clients might not talk to you about it. They might just give you
Absolutely.
this happened this week, and all of a sudden you're looking at the results and going, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Pardon my French. But, you know, and you're like, what's going on? And they're just like, nothing. Like, I just had a bad week. Like, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, well, we're going to maybe have to make some changes now. And that might be
Sure.
a move in the wrong direction. And,
Right.
you know what I mean? Because, you know, all coaches have online based, you know, is pictures and data. That's it. That's how we live. That's how we live, right? And
Absolutely.
that's another form of data that we can use and analyze to figure out what's going on better in their lives to get them a little bit better, right? And
Sure.
like I said, like, or you know, it's important, and you know, we want these people to be their best, and we need all the data we can get. And you know what? What's going on in personal lives and stuff like that is part of the data that you need to analyze as well. As we mentioned earlier, you know, someone's stressed out, they have something happen, they have a tragedy, and if they're not talking to you about it, and all of a sudden, like, everything changes, and you go, we need to slash the calories, like, something's going on here, like,
Right.
you know, or something.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, and you can need to make a very, very wise decision. And I just wanted to, off topic of that completely, actually, talk about the way you're describing how you set up your pre-prep is exactly what I did. My off season, I got up to like 196, 198. Like, that was my like off season, like, or growth season weight. I got up there. I was just trying to like grow as much as possible, and I said, okay, you know what, 6-week mini cut. You know, it was like 2 months out, and I was like, okay, perfect. Or no, sorry, it was like 2.5, 3 months out. So I had a 6-week mini cut. I lost 12 pounds. So I think I sat in at like 185, 186, and then I just hit a maintenance phase. You know,
Yes.
I didn't really eat above or below calories, but I lifted some strength related stuff, and you know, I just had a good, really nice, fun training. Like, it was a good month. I felt great. And like, I hit it, and I was like, you know what, the guys told me to be 178, but I'm at this point right now. I think I really made some serious growth. I was looking at pictures for myself, like, at certain points last year. I was comparative to this year, and I said, I really think that I'm in a good position. So I said, 16 pounds, 186, 170 on stage. I think that's a pretty good, like, estimate of what I have to do in 16 weeks. Now, you know, that's nothing crazy to think about. You know what I mean? Like, that's a... people can achieve that in their prep time. But, you know, that's part of it. And I was talking to Dr. Mike Israel on my thing recently, and we talked about it, and we were talking about diet breaks and weight loss, and he said, you know, a lot of the hunger cues come from, like, especially in post-show, they come from the amount of weight you have to lose over time and not the duration.
Yes.
Which is, like, you think about that for a second, and you have someone that comes in that has 30 pounds to lose, or 40, and they lose that very quickly. All these negative adaptations and hormones are going to come crashing down at some point. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So by me, if I thought to myself, you know, maybe I'll just make my prep longer, maybe I'll lose all this weight at once. But I think it's very intelligent to, you know, take that period. I lost 12 pounds, which, you know, to people, it's not that crazy. You do a mini cut, it's 6 weeks. I was successful with it. 2 pounds a week, it's good. I was about, you know, 1% body weight, a little bit higher, which is pretty good for a mini cut style. Now, you come into that, and then I took a month at maintenance. I let everything just basically reset. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Everything just goes back to normal levels. Like, you know, that mini cut, like you said, you're still periodizing, like, your testosterone isn't going to tank, like, your hormones. Like, in that small period of time, they're pretty much malleable to be able to be good again. So when I was ready for prep, as you mentioned, I was ready to go. And then I started just basically slowly adding in that volume. And, you know, I'll be deloading in 2 weeks from now and then finishing up with a very high volume block. But the way right now, I just, like, had pictures taken today. I'd say I'm about 5 pounds out, and I got 6.5 weeks. That's in a pretty good position for me to be in. I'm losing still about 1.5 pounds a week. So I'll be ready early, and I'll get to increase food. And it is huge. And a lot of people don't even understand that concept here. In fact, like, I tried to have somebody try to talk me out of it. They were like, don't be ready too early. You know, you're going to ruin your physique. You're going to be like this. You're going to be like that. And I was like, no. Like, that's not how it's going to work. I'm going to basically, the last 2 or 3 weeks, depending, I'm going to, like, increase my calories by X amount. I'm going to come in looking full. I'll have my peak
Sure.
week, who I'm working with, Jared Feather. I don't know if you know who Jared
Awesome.
is.
Yeah.
Jared just got his Mr. Poseidon. He just got his first
It's impressive.
win at pro. Yeah, impressive. It's crazy. So he signed on to help me with my peak week because just for myself, I'm coaching myself this year, and coming through all of this by myself has been kind of a mental battle to not make stupid decisions.
Yes. Yeah.
But Jared's there basically to be like, this is what you need to do, Henry. Don't be an idiot.
Yes. Yeah.
Because
Stay-
you need
stay on course.
somebody to stay on that course. But yeah, it's really interesting how you plan your prep, and it's pretty much exactly what I done, because as we mentioned before, we don't want to move too fast through prep. You don't want to basically set yourself up for success and stuff like that, especially with training. Like you said, coming in with a very high volume block, and you're just lifting 10 reps and 15s for your accessory works, and all of a sudden you're like, yep, time to start prep. And it's like, where are you going to go from there? How are you going to progressively overload through a period of 16, 20 weeks? It's going to be very difficult. In fact, you might have to resensitize with a strength block. And by doing that, we just talked about what happens when you do a strength block
Sure.
in a deficit, right?
And on that note, if you think about, that's metabolic training, or metabolite training. So if you're hitting your metabolism with cutting calories, and then you're also hitting your metabolism with, the most metabolic intense training stimulus,
Yep.
you're hitting it from both avenues, and you can really take a hit there, just start to burn out, and you don't necessarily want to have to take too many detours out of your prep, and mentally that'll just take a chip out of your edge. So I mean, what Mike Israel was saying, the harder you push that body, the more apt it's going to be to push back, and then so you play that to your factor. So if we can make slow adjustments, give us the time to make those slow adjustments, you're just setting yourself up for success.
No, and you know what? And that is exactly the name of the game. That is I think the growth season incarnate is set yourself up for success.
Yes.
Because you have that period of time, you have your show prep, you know what you have to do in this period of time. So take that growth season, do it intelligently, and plan it within your macro goals, and set it up so everything comes into play. And that's pretty much it, right? But a lot of people just start off and they go, I'm going to do a show prep, and they come in and that's it. And that's what I said. It surprised me when you guys said, I need you to be this weight for show next year. And I was like, what? It was crazy. And in fact, I have clients that contact me and they're like, I want to do a show in, say, May or next November. And they say, when's the best time for me to start? I say, sooner the better.
Right, absolutely.
To be honest. And they're like, well, and I'm like, well, there's a very short period of time that I need to learn about you completely.
Right.
And if I don't know your training history, if I don't know when you start to overreach, I have a girl that she can't do any more than 15 sets of legs a week, and she's crippled, and I have another one that can handle 20.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's right. And
That's vital knowledge for you as a coach.
Vital knowledge, and nobody. Oh, not I wouldn't say nobody, but a lot of people don't take this into consideration, right? So if I started that 15 girl out and I'm like, okay, we're going to do a progressive overload, we're going to do it a set style, start you off at 14 sets a week and end you at 18, well, in 2 weeks, as we mentioned earlier, she's crushed. She can't do her workout. She lowers her volume. She's writing me what's going on? And I'm like, well, we're going to have to deload you, right? And it's like,
right.
Oh, well, taking an extra deload in prep is not great. It's not great in general, but even though more disadvantageous. But
you're under training or under recovering, I should say.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's very important to be able to know this about people and, ask if, a lot of them I find don't have that training history. A lot of athletes I know, they document everything. I tell my clients, document everything, because I need all that information to go through, So it's really interesting, because once again, she can tell me she's been lifting X amount of sets in a surplus, but then when I put her into a deficit, that volume is going to drop no matter what. So if she's doing that girl that can handle 20 sets a week of legs, if she's, cut her calories by 500, what's going to happen is that volume's going to drop. And if she writes me and says, I'm doing this for so long and you need to be able to adapt and think about this. And that's, once again, why it doesn't work for everyone. You can't give everyone the same meal plan. You can't give everyone the same workout. Everyone is individualized, and everyone's a little different. And I think that's a very good thing to take away from this as well, is, everyone is different, and everyone needs specific different things.
Yeah.
100%.
Part of that battle in contest prep is managing cortisol, and so having that relationship set up prior, coach-client relationship is huge to getting the correct feedback, because I do all my coaching online. So if they can't type it out to me for personal reasons that they don't feel comfortable, or they want to act tough or something, like, I'm not getting that feedback. So I'm going to keep pushing them, and you might have to you might be under recovering, and then cortisol's going up, food's going down, cortisol's going up again. It's a domino effect. So
yeah, you need to. Yeah, it's just so important to be able to coach people to the highest level that you can. And you need all that data, and it's so awesome. But that pretty much takes us to our hour. That went by extremely quickly. Yeah. I didn't even realize it. Was there anything else? We covered pretty much the 3 avenues that we wanted to talk about there. The transition from show day to reverse. We also talked about the how you set up your growth season with a lot of stuff there. And then we talked about show prep.
Yes.
Which, taking a period of time and making sure that you're at the, absolute best you can be to start your show. Is there anything else you wanted to cover with, in regards to anything there? Because I think we pretty much hit the nail on the head.
I think I touched on all my notes, and I mean, the biggest thing that I do to help success in stepping on stage in their best conditioning is planning. And I think it's overlooked. It is a lot different from actually just saying I'm going to step on stage and actually doing, and doing smartly, because there's very little research on prep and reversing and all that. So using the biofeedback from person to person and building that relationship, all that courting, that takes time. So plan for that, and plan.
Yeah, it's all about the data. All about the data. All right, Daniel, well, that pretty much wraps it up then. Thank you so much for taking the time today to come on. I know you've had a hectic little bit of a time. You were on a bit of a travel in to get back home, and I appreciate you, waiting and getting in this today. Is absolutely fantastic, and I think the listeners are going to love it. Coming further out, I'm going to post your information of anybody, for Daniel's Facebook, as well as his Instagram and things like that, so you guys can follow along and see what he's doing, get his business email and things like that in the bottom here in case you'd like to contact him. So with that, I'd like to say thank you once more, and hopefully we'll be talking again soon. I can't see that we'll not talking again soon, but we can get on again. All right.
Thank you, Henry. Good luck with the prep, man.
Thanks, brother. Cheers.
Cheers.